In this video, I'm going to show you how I was able to transform my newly laid sod from this to this. And it's all because of two simple things.
Keep it simple and just mow.
If you've been following my channel, you know I had new sod laid. It was Celebration Bermuda, and at first it was not established. And at the beginning of the season, it was very slow to establish itself. It was kind of disappointing, and I was starting to regret my decision. But as it warmed up, I noticed the grass started to become thicker and thicker. Now, full disclosure, I did put down fertilizers. I used multiple fertilizers. I used granular, I use liquid, I put down humic acids, but I feel those things still didn't have a major effect on the lawn growth. But what did play a major part, number one, was the mowing. I continued to mow regardless of how the lawn looked. I tried to maintain that mowing height and not to take off too much at one time. I felt doing this encouraged the grass to grow even more and spread laterally. So mowing was a key factor. And the second key factor, believe it or not, was irrigation. Now, we've had a few natural rainfall from Mother Nature, and the grass really liked it, mainly because of the nitrogen that's falling down from the atmosphere. But supplemental irrigation was really important for me. Now, a lot of times I see people make this mistake. They say I go out and water my lawn for about 20 minutes per zone, maybe every 2 to 3 days, and that's the wrong way to go about it. You have to know your output. You have to know how much water is coming out of your faucet. So let me give you an example. I have pretty decent pressures coming out of the faucet, but I needed to know exactly how much was coming out. So a way to go about this is to take some type of meter, a way to measure how much water you're able to put out. You can get fancy and get these measuring cups, but you can also do the same thing with a tuna can. And to be more accurate, you want to use multiple devices located at different points of where you're going to put your sprinkler. So you want to turn on your sprinkler system, and you want to measure how long it takes to reach the halfway mark, usually about ½ inch. So if you know that number, then you can pretty much take a really good educated guess on how much time it would take to put out 1 inch. So an example for my house, I'm able to put out ½ inch over 1 hour and 10 minutes. That's 1 hour of 10 minutes just to put down a ½ inch. So you can imagine if I need to put out 1 inch of water, it's going to take me just over 2 hours to put out 1 inch. So this is just an example for me. What it is for you is going to be a little bit different, but you need to know how much water your system is putting out. You will be surprised how much water is put out over 20 minutes, and it's going to be very little. This is probably one of the main reasons why certain lawns struggle at certain times of the year, because they're not getting enough irrigation. So you need to know your output. So if I know I've gone a while without any natural rainfall, I'm going to go ahead and do my own setup. And I have an automatic watering schedule. So typically, if I want to get out 1 or maybe 1.5 inches of water per week, during the summertime, I'm going to split that watering up, usually 2 waterings spread apart by 3 days. So every 3 days, I come out and water ½ inch, and then 3 days later I'll come out and water another ½ inch. And if I really need to step it up, I'm gonna come out and water even more, or I'm gonna cut that time into maybe every 2 days, put down a ½ inch, 2 days later ½ inch, another 2 days, that's ½ inch. That's 1.5 inches. So depending on the weather, how hot it is, whether I have natural rainfall or not, I'm gonna water either 2 or 3 times per week. The beauty about this system I have here is you can set a timer to go off. My first timer goes off at about 3:30 a.m. That's when I'm sleeping and the watering schedule can actually start. So different zones will activate and stay on for different times. For example, my front lawn, because it gets mostly sun, it's going to stay on a little bit longer. It's going to stay on for about 1 hour to 1.5 hours. But my side yard, the side that gets the least amount of sun, that's gonna stay on for about 30 minutes, mainly because if there's not much sunlight, I don't have to worry about watering as heavily. So you can tailor each individual zone on the timer itself to give out a certain amount or whatever amount that you need for that particular turf. Location plays a big part. So an area that has full sun is going to require more water. An area that has less sun requires less water. The good thing about the system I have is when it's time to water the lawn, I'm going to pull everything out and set it up the day before. This way it will come on, and the first starting time would be 3:30. So this system I have, it requires multiple hoses, but the hoses are relatively cheap and they last a very long time. Just bring them in for the winter time. But I typically set everything out the day before. Then they come on in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping. By 9-10 a.m. it's done. I pull everything back and not have to worry about it for 2 or 3 days. And when it's time to water, I do the same thing. Repeat the cycle. Pull the hoses out, set it up, allow it to water the next day, the next morning, and then pull it back in. So the short story is you can put out all the fertilizers you want, but if you're not mowing and you're not providing good irrigation, you're not going to get the results that you need. And you can see my lawn has slowly transformed over time, all because of these 2 little things.